Shut up, you old cracker! You think you have the right to make cold food for me? You deserved it. It's my blessing that you live off me. Never forget your place, parasite. None will save you today.
Why is the house so dark? Kwame, my son, help! Help!
Mom.
The Accra afternoon hung thick like a storm waiting to break the sky. Turning gray, the low clouds pressing down on the luxurious rooftops of cantonments. Inside the sprawling mansion, with its gleaming marble floors, Mama Ya sat on a wooden chair by the kitchen window. Her uneven legs stretched out, one trembling gently as her thin fingers clung to the tablecloth for balance. The smell of a goosey soup, dried fish, and hot spices blended together, warm, familiar. If not for the cold footsteps approaching behind her. You spilled soup on the floor again. Mame's voice floated out, soft, gentle, even. But beneath it was a velvet-covered blade. Mama Ya jerked, glancing down. Yes, a few drops had splashed onto the marble. She hurriedly bent down with the dishcloth. But the moment her knees folded, a sharp pain shot up her leg. Her left calf trembled, wobbling under her frail weight. "I'm sorry, my legs are too weak," she whispered. Mame stepped closer and ripped the cloth from her hand. "If you're old and clumsy, fine. Just keep quiet about it. Don't turn this house into a pigsty. Do you understand?" The old woman swallowed her protest. She had lived long enough to know some battles were unwinnable when you were weak. But her heart still tightened at one particular word. This house. This house was her son's house. The same son she once cradled inside a leaking mud hut, staring up through holes in the roof while whispering, "One day, my child, you'll live in a house with strong walls and a roof that never leaks." She had never dared dream of a mansion like this. Back in Denu village, Mama Ya had been the Iron Woman. Before dawn, she hauled baskets of corn, beans, and fruit to the market, her small shoulders bending beneath the weight. Her hands grew calloused from firewood, from pots, from shielding her goods with her own body during storms. Then came the accident when she was 19. A truck swerved. She shoved her younger sister out of the way. Her legs paid the price. One calf shrank forever. Every step since then burned like fire. But she never fell. She learned to walk again with a wooden cane. She kept going to the market. She kept selling every handful of corn, every bundle of leaves. She fed Kwame with thin corn porridge, so watery she could see the bottom of the pot. Yet every time she handed him a bowl, she smiled. "Eat, my son. One day you'll eat in places I don't even dare step into." When Kwame got into university, she cried like a little child. When he became a billionaire, and his name appeared on TV, she clutched an old, wrinkled newspaper and read every line again and again, even though her eyes were failing. But there was one thing she never said aloud: her fear of being left behind. When Kwame brought Mame home, his eyes glowed like the boy he used to be, not the hardened man who battled in boardrooms. "Mom, this is Mame. She has a master's degree, works at a bank, very gentle, very responsible." He wrapped an arm proudly around his wife. Mama Ya smiled, and like every mother, she blamed herself for the uneasy feeling in her chest. Mame smiled like the cover of a magazine. Delicate handshake, respectful bow. In front of Kwame, she was sweetness itself. "Yes, sir. No, sir. Mom, let me help you." But behind his back, her eyes turned cold, sharp, metallic, dangerous. On the first day after the wedding, Kwame flew to Kumasi for an urgent meeting. He squeezed his mother's hands. "Mom, stay here with Mame. She'll take care of you. You don't have to work anymore." Mama Ya nodded, looking at his big hands. The same hands that were once tiny enough to fit inside her rough palms, now strong, wearing a luxury watch. Maybe she was wrong, she thought. Maybe God truly sent her son a good wife. But the bruises showed up quickly, her knee, her arm, her upper wrist. Small at first, greenish-bluish shadows. Kwame noticed. "Mom, what happened to your leg?" Mame sighed softly, placing a loving hand on her husband's shoulder. "I told Mom not to climb the stairs. I begged her to let the housekeeper handle things, but she insisted. You know how stubborn old people can be." The old woman opened her mouth, ready to say, "That's not true, son." But Mommy squeezed his shoulder and murmured warmly, "I was so scared. She fell yesterday. I had to help her up." Kwame's eyes softened instantly. He turned to his mother so tender. "Mom, please listen to my wife. Don't push yourself. Rest." "Okay?" Mama Ya's heart sank. She looked into her son's trusting eyes and saw nothing but blind devotion to the woman beside him. That trust was like a glass wall, beautiful, modern, and invisible, blocking her from reaching him. The second time he saw a bruise on her wrist, Mame had another explanation ready. She tripped on the table edge. "I keep telling her to be careful." Kwame frowned, but when Mommy's eyes glistened with fake tears, "I'd die if something happened to her. I really would." He pulled her close, stroking her back. Mama Ya sat silently, listening to the rustle of his shirt, as he comforted the wife he believed to be kind. She turned toward the wall so no one would see the tears in her own eyes. That night, when the house was quiet and the wind rattled the palm leaves outside, Mame appeared in her doorway, arms crossed. "Tomorrow, you'll scrub every tile on the ground floor. I have guests coming. I don't want them seeing dirty footprints." "My leg," Mama Ya whispered. "It's hard for me to walk." Mame leaned in, speaking slowly. Every word a stone dropped into the old woman's chest. "Listen carefully. If you don't clean it, you can go back to your Denu village. Let's see how long a like you survives." The door closed, not loudly but with enough force to shake something deep inside her. Denu village, where her old hut was long rented out. Denu village where she had sold everything she could sell so her son could study, work, and rise. Going back would mean telling the world that the mother of a billionaire still crawled in poverty. That humiliation, she could not bear it. So the next morning she knelt with her cane beside her, scrubbing tile after tile until sweat mixed with water and her knees went numb. But the worst pain wasn't the bruises, not the insults, not the days she went hungry because someone forgot her portion. The worst pain was the shine in her son's eyes whenever he spoke of his wife. "Mama takes such good care of you, right, Mom? Don't be too hard on her. She's a modern woman." Every time she heard that, Mama Ya smiled, the smile of someone who had outlived her own heartbreak. "Yes, she's very modern," she replied softly. Inside her chest, a small crack had already formed, a crack in her faith. She still believed that if she endured quietly, her son would remain happy. She never imagined that her silence and Kwame's blind trust in this soft-spoken, bank-educated angel would be the very knife that would someday tear his heart apart. On one stormy night, when truth had nowhere left to hide, and the hot iron was only the opening act of the nightmare to come. Morning in cantonments began with the soft hum of the pool filter, the flutter of birds on the fence, and the sharp click-click-click of Mame's heels tapping across the marble floor. Mama Ya knelt at the foot of the staircase, her thin hands gripping a wet rag as she scrubbed each step. Every time she lifted her knee, the joint in her left leg cracked loudly. Her whole body seemed to resist every small movement she tried to make. "Are you cleaning or taking a nap down there?" Mame's voice floated down from above, sweet, melodic, but cold enough to frost glass. The old woman looked up, sweat beading across her wrinkled forehead. "I'm almost done. My leg is weak." Mame braced one hand against the railing, a glass of orange juice in the other, leaning forward as if she were examining a smudge she meant to wipe away. Disability isn't an excuse to be lazy in a billionaire's home. You know, Every step here has been walked by my husband's colleagues. I don't want anyone thinking his mother is some village woman who brings dirt into the house. The words, his mother, fell from her lips like something disposable, an object, not a person. Mama Ya bowed her head again and continued scrubbing. Her back bent lower, as if she wished she could disappear entirely. Ever since moving into her son's mansion, Mame had discovered something money couldn't erase memory. Whenever Kwame reminisced, back then, my mother carried bags of charcoal just to buy me school books. Back then, she went to the hospital alone, then walked home on her cane to cook dinner for me. His eyes would shine the way they used to when he was a boy, bragging about a perfect test score. Mame would sit beside him, smiling softly, one hand resting on his thigh. But inside something hot and ugly simmered, because the crippled woman with the shrunken leg, the one who limped around like a relic from a poor world, was still the hero in the heart of the man she wanted to own completely. She couldn't stand it, so every day she chipped away at whatever pride the old woman still had left. Another afternoon rain hammered the zinc roofing behind the kitchen. Distant horns echoed from the main road. Mama Ya reached for the edge of her bed and felt for her wooden cane. She remembered placing it beside the wardrobe like always. Her fingers meant nothing. She sat up abruptly, heart racing. My cane. Where is my cane? She pushed herself to her feet. Without the cane, her body tilted dangerously. Pain shot up from her knee to her skull. Holding on to furniture for support, she dragged herself toward the door. Mame sat on the sofa, scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, TV on, only for ambiance. Mame, have you seen my cane? The old woman asked, her voice shaking. Mame didn't look up. Maybe the cleaner moved it. You don't really need a cane. You only walk around the house. But my leg. This time Mame lifted her head, irritation flashing in her beautiful eyes. What exactly do you need the cane for? To go limping around the street. Let people see the mother of a billionaire hobbling like a beggar. Sit in your room. I don't want you wandering around and embarrassing us. Silence. Billionaire. Placed together in one sentence like a verdict. That night, when she needed to use the bathroom, she used both hands to brace against the wall and dragged her leg forward, inch by inch. Every step was a streak of fire across her knee. She slipped at one point, fell to the floor, and cracked her forehead against the sink. A thin line of blood trickled down. She bit her lip hard to keep from crying out. Only one whisper escaped her. Help me. No one came. No one heard. On days when guests visited the mansion filled with laughter, luxury cars lined the driveway. Perfume lingered in the air. Glasses clinked keyed, and soft piano music drifted through the halls. Mama Ya stood hidden behind the kitchen door, peeking through a narrow gap. Kwame laughed at something, his arm around Mame. Mame looked like a flawless socialite-fitted dress. Red lipstick, gentle laughter, her hand brushing guests' arms, like she belonged in this glittering world. An older guest asked jokingly, "Where's your mother? We must meet the woman who gave birth to that brilliant mind of yours." Kwame turned to his wife, smile bright. Mommy blinked sweetly, gripping her wine glass. "Oh, his mother's health is declining. She's resting. The doctor says crowds make her tired. I take care of her every day." The table cooed with admiration. What a good daughter-in-law. Kwame, you're blessed. Only one person heard those words like a slap. Mama Ya standing in the dark, gripping her apron so tightly, her knuckles turned white. In that moment, she understood something clearly. In the story her son was living, she was only a name. Mame was the writer, the lead actress, the editor of every line spoken in this house. And every time Kwame believed her, a piece of the old woman's heart crumbled. Abuse wasn't always slaps or shouting. In this mansion, it was. Morning spent scrubbing floors while her legs trembled, cooking until sweat drenched her back, only to be told her food lacked refinement. walking long hallways without a cane, every step a stab of pain, being locked away during parties like an outdated piece of furniture. The small cracks built up day after day, hour after hour, like hairline fractures in a wall no one notices until a storm finally arrives and the whole structure collapses. Mame looked at the old woman's bruises, her trembling attempts to stand her forced smile, and whispered, "I'm fine." And to Mame, it wasn't a sad sight, it was a challenge. One evening, standing in the kitchen, Mame watched the iron heating up. The red light glowed bright, menacing, like the eye of a demon. An idea slid into her mind. If bruises weren't enough to teach the old woman her place, then maybe a burn, clear, deep, unforgettable would. She ran a finger along the handle of the iron, her lips curling into a slow, icy smile. That day, Mame didn't just want her tired. She didn't just want her hurting. She wanted to carve fear into the skin of that crippled mother, like leaving her signature behind. "This is my house, and on your body, I'll leave my mark." That afternoon, Accra turned so dark it felt like someone had dragged the clouds down to scrape the rooftops. The wind picked up, lashing against the glass windows, screeching in long, thin streaks like a warning from another world. In the huge kitchen, covered in white marble, Mama Ya stood trembling in front of the gas stove. She tried to stir the boiling aggie, but her hands were too weak. Sweat slid down and splashed against the rim of the pot. The ladle slipped from her grip, clattering to the floor with a sharp clang that echoed through the room. Mama appeared almost instantly, like a shadow that had been summoned. She stood at the kitchen doorway, arms folded, eyes moving from the pot of soup to the spilled broth on the floor. On her perfectly made-up face was open, unfiltered contempt. "What did you just spill?" she snapped. "Do you think a billionaire's house is the same as your little food stall back in Denu village?" Mama Ya bent down, reaching for the ladle with shaking fingers. "I'm sorry. I can cook it again." Mame strode over and yanked her arm so hard the old woman almost fell. "Cook again. You do everything slower than a crippled turtle. His friends will be here any minute. I told you to make 5 dishes, and you've only done 2. Are you trying to embarrass me in front of them, Mama Ya?" Mama Ya tried to speak. "My leg, it hurts. I can't keep up." A twisted smile crept across Mame's face. Not a smile of amusement. The smile of someone who'd finally run out of patience. "Good," she whispered, her voice so low it slithered across the tiles like a snake. "Because today you're going to remember." She let go of the old woman's arm and pulled open a drawer. There was a sharp click as she plugged something in. Mama Ya looked up, her heart pounding. Mame slid the iron out from the cabinet, a big one with a heavy steel plate, the kind used to press Kwame's expensive shirts. She set it on the counter and turned the heat dial all the way up. The red light blinked on. Heat rose in a thin, shimmering wave like ghostly smoke. The old woman stumbled back, bumping into the edge of a cabinet. "Mame, don't. Please, my child. Let me keep cooking. I'll go faster." Mame walked toward her, each step slow and deliberate, like a predator circling its prey. "Who do you think you are in this house?" she hissed. "You're a crippled old woman living off charity. Me, I'm the one who owns this house. I'm the one Kwame loves. You don't get to give orders. Not one single word." She grabbed the old woman's wrist and dragged her toward the iron. Mama Ya struggled weakly. "Mama, my leg is weak. I didn't mean to spill. I was just trying to help." "Wrong." Mame growled, leaning in so close her eyes filled the old woman's world. "You exist to serve me, and today I'm going to make sure you never forget that." Her fingers dug into Mama Ya's wrist until the bones went white. Then, in one lightning-fast motion, Mame slammed the old woman's hand down against the blazing hot iron. The sound of burning flesh cracked through the kitchen. The scream that tore from the old mother's throat was like fabric being ripped apart, cutting through the marble walls, through the wide kitchen, all the way into the storm-black Accra sky. The glowing iron seared into her skin, heat bursting into the air, filling it with the thick, sickening smell of charred flesh. Her skin shrank back, her fingers convulsed, trying to jerk away, but Mame only pressed down harder. "You ungrateful old witch," Mame snarled, her voice darkened by something almost demonic. "You'll remember this lesson every time you look at that scar. You won't dare defy me again, Mama Ya." Mama Ya collapsed, her body curling in on itself, her arm jerking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat, merging with a pain too deep for words. When Mama finally let go, the old woman's hand was bright red, then quickly turning a swollen, angry purple, black ballooning as if it might burst. She fell to the marble floor, clutching her burned arm, sobbing like a child being beaten in the dark. Mommy watched her without a flicker of pity. She pulled out a tissue, dabbed away a bit of sweat from her own forehead, and said calmly, voice flat and cold, "If you ever go against me again, next time, it won't just be your hand." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Mama Ya curled up on the floor, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Outside the glass, thunder exploded, lightning slashed the sky in blinding white. No one knew that those thunderclaps were the drum roll before the fall of the wicked. Because only a few minutes later, the familiar roar of an SUV engine echoed at the mansion gate. Billionaire Kwami had come home earlier than expected, and what he was about to see would change the rest of his life. That night in Accra felt heavy enough to crush the entire city. A wind twisted through the mansion courtyard, whipping dry leaves into spinning circles. Inside the kitchen, Mama Ya still lay curled on the icy marble floor, her burned, blistered hand swollen like a bruised balloon. She gasped for air, each breath slicing into her chest like a blade. Mame stood in the kitchen doorway, a white tissue stained with mascara still clutched in her hand. She stared at the trembling old woman with no emotion at all, like the suffering at her feet wasn't human. But then she heard the crunch of tires rolling over gravel outside. Her face froze. Rumble. The automatic gate flew open faster, harder than usual, as if someone had slammed the button with every ounce of urgency in their body. The scream that tore from the old mother's throat was like fabric being ripped apart, cutting through the marble walls, through the wide kitchen, all the way into the storm-black Accra sky. The glowing iron seared into her skin, heat bursting into the air, filling it with the thick, sickening smell of charred flesh. Her skin shrank back, her fingers convulsed, trying to jerk away, but Mame only pressed down harder. "You ungrateful old witch," Mame snarled, her voice darkened by something almost demonic. "You'll remember this lesson every time you look at that scar. You won't dare defy me again, Mama Ya." Mama Ya collapsed, her body curling in on itself, her arm jerking uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with sweat, merging with a pain too deep for words. When Mama finally let go, the old woman's hand was bright red, then quickly turning a swollen, angry purple, black ballooning as if it might burst. She fell to the marble floor, clutching her burned arm, sobbing like a child being beaten in the dark. Mommy watched her without a flicker of pity. She pulled out a tissue, dabbed away a bit of sweat from her own forehead, and said calmly, voice flat and cold, "If you ever go against me again, next time, it won't just be your hand." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Mama Ya curled up on the floor, her whole body shaking like a leaf in a storm. Outside the glass, thunder exploded, lightning slashed the sky in blinding white. No one knew that those thunderclaps were the drum roll before the fall of the wicked. because only a few minutes later, the familiar roar of an SUV engine echoed at the mansion gate. Billionaire Kwame had come home earlier than expected, and what he was about to see would change the rest of his life. That night in Accra felt heavy enough to crush the entire city. A wind twisted through the mansion courtyard, whipping dry leaves into spinning circles. Inside the kitchen, Mama Ya still lay curled on the icy marble floor, her burned, blistered hand swollen like a bruised balloon. She gasped for air, each breath slicing into her chest like a blade. Mame stood in the kitchen doorway, a white tissue stained with mascara still clutched in her hand. She stared at the trembling old woman with no emotion at all, like the suffering at her feet wasn't human. But then she heard the crunch of tires rolling over gravel outside. Her face froze. Rumble. The automatic gate flew open faster, harder than usual, as if someone had slammed the button with every ounce of urgency in their body. The familiar roar of an SUV engine cut through the night. A black Range Rover slid into the driveway, its headlights slicing through the trees and throwing white light across the glass windows. Raindrops began tapping against the hood in scattered bursts. Mame inhaled sharply, her hand shaking. "I'm finished." Her voice cracked tight with panic, her heartbeat slamming against her ribs. She crouched down, trying desperately to pull the old woman's sweater sleeve over her burned wrist. But Mama Ya's hand trembled too violently. Every time Mame touched her, the old woman recoiled like she was about to faint. Mame hissed under her breath, "Hold still, useless old woman." But the more she barked, the harder Mama Ya trembled. The car door shut with a sharp, brutal click. It sounded like the hammer of a guillotine. Then footsteps, fast, heavy, determined, crossing the stone courtyard. Footsteps she knew. Footsteps of a man who never came home early unless something serious had happened. The footsteps of billionaire Kwami, the very man she was trying to hide everything from. The front door lock turned. The door burst open. Mame. His voice rang through the hallway, tired but edged with steel. "Why is the kitchen light still on? Where are you?" Mame sucked in a breath, forcing her voice into something calm. "Beggy, you're home early." I was just, but his footsteps were already pounding toward the kitchen, sharp, commanding each one, hitting the marble like a war drum. Kwame stepped into the kitchen. He wore a dark gray shirt, sleeves rolled up, a briefcase still in his hand, never even opened. His hair was wet from the rain, his breathing fast, as if he'd sprinted all the way from the car. He had never come home early like this. "Mame," he frowned. "I heard a noise. Where's my mother?" Mame swallowed hard, forcing a small, brittle smile. "She's asleep. I just cleaned the kitchen. Don't wake her up." But then Kwame paused just 1 second and he noticed something tiny. Tiny enough only a son who'd lived his whole life with his mother would recognize. Mama Ya's slipper, lying crooked on the tile. Not where she always placed it. Not the position of someone who had calmly gone to bed. And beside it, a tear, still fresh, still glistening on the marble. He turned his head slowly toward Mame, his eyes narrowing, sharpening. "Why is my mother's slipper here?" Mame froze just for a heartbeat, but it was enough, far too much. She must have come for water. "I didn't see her in the kitchen." His voice dropped an octave, dangerously calm. Mame gave a strained laugh. She was thirsty. She likes cold water, you know. But her voice faded because as she spoke, Kwame's gaze dropped to the floor, and he saw them. His mother's feet sticking out from behind the kitchen island, bare, shaking, pulled tight into a trembling curl like a broken bird. He moved fast, heart hammering. "Mama!" His voice cracked, splintered into a sound. Mama had never once heard from him. He rounded the counter and saw a sight he would never ever unsee. His mother, lying on her side, her burned arm folded protectively against her chest. Her wrist swollen, blackened, blistered, the unmistakable mark of a scorching hot iron pressed against human flesh. Tears dried on her cheeks, her lips trembled violently, her entire body shook with pain. "Kwami," she whispered, her voice thin as a thread about to snap. "You came home." He dropped to his knees so fast the briefcase hit the floor with a thud. "Oh my God, Mama, what happened? Who did this to you? Who?" Before he could finish, her trembling fingers clutched the front of his shirt, weak, soft, desperate, trying to pull him closer. "No, don't blame anyone, Mama. Mama fell. Mama made mistake." "No," he whispered, choking on his own breath. "You have never lied to me like this. Not like this. Mama, who hurt you?" Behind him, Mame stood frozen, breath catching, knees wobbling. She took one step back, then another. The room felt smaller. The walls felt tighter. Her world began to close in. And then from the corner of his eye, Kwame saw the iron sitting on the counter, still glowing faintly with residual heat, still plugged in. Something inside him snapped. A small, sharp click. The sound of trust shattering, the sound of a heart cracking, the sound of a marriage dying in one single breath. He rose to his feet slowly, deliberately, but the fury building behind his eyes was volcanic. He turned toward Mame. He didn't speak. He didn't need to, because the look on his face, the look of a man who had just seen the truth behind the woman he once loved, told Mame everything she had just lost. Everything. He had just laid his mother on the bed, wrapping a temporary bandage around her burned wrist. Every movement of his hands trembled with fear, with pain, with anger, and with a rising flood of regret that felt like a dam breaking inside him. The room was so quiet. He could hear her faint, fragile breaths. Kwame looked down at his mother's bandaged hand, and a stabbing ache tore through his chest, as if a blade had been driven straight into him. And then memories dragged him backwards so violently he felt dizzy. He was 8 years old again, a skinny little boy, all elbows and laughter, running along the edge of the Denu village stream, chasing a tattered paper kite. The wind picked up, the string snagged on a branch, jutting out over the water. "Mama, I can get it," he shouted, eyes bright with triumph. Mama Ya, then in her early 30s, her body still strong, though her leg had been damaged years earlier, called after him. "No, Kwame, stop. The rocks are slippery." But the boy didn't listen. He reached out, stepping onto a moss-covered stone, and slipped. He heard a short cry escape his own mouth. Then icy water swallowed him whole. He remembered the panic perfectly. Water crashing into his mouth, into his nose. His arms flailing, his feet kicking nothing but emptiness. The current dragged him downward, spinning him like a toy, stealing every breath like a hungry beast. He thought, "I'm going to die." But through the roaring water, a hand seized his wrist, a weak hand but unyielding. It was Mama Ya. She didn't think. She didn't hesitate. She jumped. She didn't think about her bad leg. She didn't think about the pain. She didn't think about anything except pulling her son back to the surface. The current slammed her against rocks. Her back hit a boulder. Her knee smashed so hard it turned purple within minutes. Her left leg buckled beneath her, but she still pushed him upward. Kwame broke the surface first, gasping for air, mud on his face. His mother dragged herself onto the bank behind him, shaking uncontrollably like a leaf in a storm. "Mama, did it hurt?" he whispered, voice breaking. She gathered him into her arms, water dripping from her hair onto his cheeks. "As long as you live," she whispered, her voice trembling with tears. "I can bear any pain." Back then, those words had floated past him like any mother's promise. But tonight they returned like a knife twisting deep into his heart. Back to the present. Kwame stood motionless, his fingers gripping the bed frame so tightly the veins stood out. He looked at his mother, this small, fragile woman, her legs shriveled since she was 19, the same woman who had thrown herself into a raging stream to save him, now lying helpless because his own wife had tortured her. A tear slid down his face. He couldn't remember the last time he'd cried. Shame clawed at him. Why didn't I see it? Why did I believe Mame's sweet lies instead of seeing my mother's pain? How did the hand that saved my life end up burned inside my own home? Outside, the rain beat harder against the window, each drop thawing like a hammer inside his skull. Kwame sat beside her, taking her swollen, burning hand into his own. "Mama," his voice cracked apart. "I'm sorry. I was wrong. I let you suffer. I didn't protect you." Mama Ya slowly opened her eyes, clouded, tired, but filled with the kind of unconditional love no one on earth could imitate. She gave him a faint smile, though her lips trembled with pain. "You came back," she whispered. "That means God didn't take your heart from you." Her words struck him like lightning. He bowed his head, tears falling onto her hand. Out in the hallway, Mame stood a few steps away, her heartbeat pounding like war drums. She saw the look in Kwame's eyes, a look she had never ever seen throughout their marriage. No admiration, no trust, no love. Only the fury of a man who had been betrayed at the deepest, most sacred level. In the dim hallway, Mame felt something icy coil around her spine. It was over, and she knew she couldn't run from what was coming. The room dimmed as the storm outside crashed against the city, each raindrop slamming into the windows as if trying to shatter the mansion's walls. Mama Ya lay curled on her side, her breaths shallow and broken, her hand still trembling from the pain that refused to fade. She tried to hide her burned wrist under the blanket, but even the slightest movement made her bite down on her lip to swallow a cry. Kwame stood beside the bed, hands braced on his knees, head bowed like a man who had just taken a blow straight to the soul. He stared at his mother, the woman who had sacrificed her entire life for him, now shrinking in fear inside the very home he bought to protect her. The air grew thick, heavy. The silence in the room crawled across the skin like ice. Then Mama Ya's eyes opened. They were full of love, always full of love. But deep inside them was a terror she was desperately trying to hide. "Don't blame Mame," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't destroy your marriage because of me." Kwame felt something twist violently inside his chest. A sharp suspicion struck him. Quick, bright, brutal, like lightning splitting the sky. Why did she panic at Mame's name? Why was she hiding her hand? Why was she lying when she had never lied to him in her entire life? A horrifying truth began stitching itself together in his mind. He sat up abruptly. "Let me see the injury." His voice was so firm, so severe that his mother flinched. Mama Ya immediately pulled her hand deeper under the blanket, her face draining of color. And that reaction, that one small movement, made every piece of the puzzle fall perfectly into place. Kwame shot to his feet, heart hammering so loudly he could hear it pounding inside his chest. A deafening crack echoed inside his mind, not from the storm, but from the place deep within him, where he had buried every fear, every childhood memory, every truth he hadn't wanted to see. Without another word, he pulled out his phone. His thumb trembled slightly as he opened the mansion's security camera app. He tapped Cam 4 Kitchen. The screen lit up. He scrolled back to 1 hour earlier. And then, the image that shattered his entire life appeared in crystal clarity. "I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request." Kwame felt his blood freeze solid. He stood up straight, his face bleaching as pale as paper. The room spun around him. A single tear dropped from his chin, landing on the phone screen, falling on the image of his mother, writhing in agony on the kitchen floor. Not because he was weak, not because he was scared, but because the pain was too much. so much it nearly drove him to his knees. The video ended, the screen went black, and his soul went black with it. Kwame inhaled slowly, deep, steady, unnatural. When he lifted his head, his eyes were no longer the eyes of a gentle husband, not the eyes of a grateful man, not the eyes of a successful billionaire. They were the eyes of a man whose anger was rising like a volcano, ready to explode. He turned toward the door, his back straightened, his shoulders solidified. Every step he took would determine someone's fate. He walked out without saying a word. In the dark hallway, Mame pressed herself against the wall. She forced a shaky smile. "Baby, you came home early. I didn't get to miss." His voice roared through the hallway like a lion shaking the valley, and Mommy's entire body jolted. This was no longer the voice of a husband, not the voice of mild frustration, not the voice of a man who could be swayed with sweet words. It was the voice of a son who had just witnessed his mother being tortured. The voice of a man whose trust had been shattered to ash, the voice of fire. Mame knew that moment was the beginning of her downfall, and there was no escaping it. That night, Accra felt as if it had been ripped in half by the storm. But inside Kwame's mansion, the air was heavier than anything raging outside. Mame stood pressed against the hallway wall, her high heels sinking into the velvet carpet she used to take pride in. Her perfectly painted face was stray with tears, not tears of regret, but tears of fear. Kwame walked toward her slow and controlled, yet more terrifying than any thunder shaking the sky. Every step he took echoed through the marble floors like nails being hammered into the coffin of a marriage that had just died in the dark. "Baby, I can explain," Mame stammered. "Explain?" His voice cut through the hall low and deep, like it rose from the bottom of the earth. "Explain why my mother's hand is burned. Explain why she trembles when she hears your name. Or explain why you press the scorching iron against the skin of the woman who gave up her entire life for me." Mame backed up until her spine hit the wall. I was angry. She didn't respect enough." His shout cracked through the hallway like a lightning strike. Mame flinched violently. This was no longer the voice of a gentle husband, not the cultured billionaire who charmed boardrooms, but the voice of a son who had just watched his mother being tortured. Kwame pulled out his phone and dialed a single number. "Lawyer Owusu, come to my house immediately and bring the police." "This is now a criminal case." Mame's legs buckled. "Kwame, you can't do this. You love me, you." "No," he said, eyes bloodshot, but voice cold, calm in the cruelest way. "I love the person I thought you were, but the woman standing in front of me now is someone else entirely." 15 minutes later, blue lights filled the driveway. Police officers stepped inside. His lawyer stood beside Kwame, face hard as stone. "Mrs. Mame Olade," an officer said, "you are under arrest for elderly abuse and aggravated assault." Mame shrieked, thrashing wildly. "I am the wife of billionaire Kwami. You can't." Before she could finish, 2 officers grabbed her arms and snapped handcuffs around her wrists. The metallic click sounded like the final nail sealing her downfall. They dragged her out of the house. No diamond earrings, no designer shoes, no aura of power. Just tangled hair, smeared mascara, and the cold truth laid bare. She turned back, hoping he might look at her just once. But Kwame had already turned away. The next morning, Accra Central Hospital Room 407. Mama Ya lay in bed, her wrist wrapped in white gauze, her palm swollen and blistered. But her eyes were calmer. Not because the pain was gone, but because her son sat beside her, gripping her hand as if he feared she might vanish. Sunlight, the first after the storm, filtered through the window, casting a warm golden glow across her face. "Mama?" Kwame's voice cracked. He hadn't slept all night. "I'm sorry. All this time, I trusted the wrong person. I let you suffer alone. I failed to protect you. He bowed his head, pressing his forehead gently to the back of her bandaged hand. Mama Ya looked at her son, the man she had raised with sweat and blood, now kneeling beside her hospital bed shoulders, shaking like the little boy who once fell into the river. She lifted her uninjured hand and stroked his hair softly. "You came back," she whispered, her voice weak, but warm like morning sunlight. "That means your heart is still there." The words shattered the shell of guilt, squeezing his chest. He lifted his head, eyes red and raw. "Mama, I promise you, I will never let anyone hurt you again." She nodded, and for the first time in many, many years, Mama Ya smiled, a small smile, but bright enough to fill the entire room. Outside the window, Accra sky opened into soft sunlight. No trace of last night's storm. And there, in a simple hospital room, mother and son held each other, breathing out the weight of months, years of hidden suffering. A family that had once seemed broken had found its way back to itself. Not through wealth, not through status, but through truth, love, and justice. Life can sometimes be so cruel that it forces us to learn the most painful lessons, not from strangers, but from the very people we once trusted the most. Mame believed she could hide all her sins behind flawless makeup, behind a sweet smile for her husband, behind the lies she repeated every single day. But the truth has one strange habit. It always finds its way into the light, even if it has to tear through the darkness to escape. It took Kwame many years to realize real love isn't spoken with lips. It's seen with the eyes and felt with the heart. His mother, the woman with the limping legs and the calloused hands, loved him with only one thing: sacrifice. And that sacrifice saved his life when he was a child, and once again saved his soul when the truth was finally revealed. As for Mame, she burned her own life down with the same fire of cruelty she thought would make others obey her. Because in the end, the one who creates pain is always the first to be consumed by the flames of karma. Never mistake someone's kindness for weakness. Sometimes that kindness is the strength of a soul that has survived a lifetime of storms. What did you learn from this story? If you were in Kwame's place, what would you have done? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one of them. Never let outsiders decide how you treat the ones who gave you life. No one on this earth will ever love you like your mother does. Protect those who once protected you. Because at the end of the day, money can build a house, but only family can build a home. And remember, where love is missing, the greatest tragedies are born. Where are you watching from? Comment your city. Accra, Dakar, Abuja, Cape Town, Paris, Sydney, Dubai, or anywhere in the world. I want to see how far our African Tales family has reached. If you love emotional stories with deep life lessons like this, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Thank you for watching until the very end. That means more to me than you can imagine.